Welcome to the Books on Air podcast. I'm Suzanne Harris, and on our podcast, we talk to the authors about themselves, their books, and their ideas. Every book has two stories, and as one of our listeners, you get the backstory behind every book. I can't wait to introduce you to today's guest. Her name is Buchanan, and she's here to talk about her inspirational book, Messages from the Divine Mother, a selection of spiritual conversations for women. Dee, what a pleasure to have you on Books on Air. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Suzanne. It's my pleasure, my real pleasure to be talking to you today.
Well, this is such a wonderful book, and this is a true labor of love from my point of view. I know that this started out as a very private, very personal journal. Every book has two stories, as I just said a minute ago. And when the listeners become readers and they start to read, then they get the story that you've given them. But the story behind this book, I think, is really so interesting. What made you decide to share all of these personal thoughts and personal messages with the world?
That's a very good question, because I never actually wrote my journal to be published. It was a very personal journey of mine at a certain time when I was going through all the emotions you go through when things don't seem to be going well, or it's like everything is crushing down on you. So it was my release of being able to talk about my emotions, and at the same time use my journal as like a prayer book, go every morning, actually pray, but through writing, to talk about, all the things that I was feeling and asking for answers, asking for confirmation, just really pouring my heart out, because I felt I had nowhere else to go to do that, to be actually truthful and honest about myself.
Had you journaled previously? Where did the idea for journaling come from?
Well, I used to, when I was younger, always keep a diary. It was always something that I did. And as I got older, it wasn't as regular as, before. But I'd actually gone to a writing workshop where we were asked to just write affirmations every morning. And, first thing you did every morning was write an affirmation about your being a writer. So the affirmation was at the time, I am a writer. So I used to just get up every morning and do that. But then one morning, I just started writing about my feelings and what I've been going through. And then it just stemmed from that. So I used to write the affirmations and then move on to writing how I was feeling, or let's say, actually, I don't know. I'd like to mention the word spiritual at this point, because I felt that something spiritual was happening. And so it became like my own morning prayer, my own morning spiritual food, or, spiritual breakfast every morning.
Oh, I like that. I like that analogy. That's a really good one. Did you feel divine inspiration?
Well, the interesting thing about it is that I started addressing my journal every morning to the Holy Mother, and then it was Divine Mother. But on every page, every morning, it was always addressing the Divine Mother or the Holy Mother. And it always started with, Good morning, Mother, or Good morning, Holy Mother, or Good morning, Divine Mother. So I then began to feel that I was, actually addressing my journal to the Divine Mother.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And that happened over time from what I
Yeah.
hear in your story, you didn't start out that way. You started out
No.
with one thing, and it gradually grew into something else. And,
Yeah.
counselors talk about the power of journaling, and that's one of the
Mm,
reasons that I think your book is so powerful and is so inspirational, is because of that very thing. It grew out of something else and became what it is now. Does that make sense?
yeah. That very much makes sense. Exactly what happened. The thing about it, it wasn't even a purposeful or meant to be um, growth, or I didn't look at it as growth. It was just as I went on, these are the words that came through. And so, I didn't even think about it like that. I just got up every morning and just wrote to the Divine Mother, and that's it. Off I went after that. So I didn't even give it a minute's thought because I always felt it was personal to me.
Now, how did you decide to share it?
Oh, with great difficulty.
I'm
I
sure.
didn't. Well, the funny thing about it is I was going through a crossroad again, as you do, and not really sure of the next path to take. And I was, having regular coaching sessions, and we did this, this kind of exercise to kind of just put down all the things that I, enjoyed doing and where I would like to go from there and things that was possible. And writing just kept coming up, and I'm thinking, I've always, thought of writing a book, but I've never really, you know, um, never really thought of what kind of book to write. Actually, I did start writing a book. Well, I started writing all the chapters, but I never got any further than the first chapter. So it's been there. And so my colleague said to me, no, so I said to my colleague, oh, I've written all these journals for over 20 years, that's probably where I got my sort of writing, flair or, experiences from. And so he says, well, what are you doing with them? So I said, what do you mean? What am I doing with them? They're my journals. There's nothing to do with them. He said, but you've got all this material for over 20 years. I said, yeah, but it's mine. It's about me. It's not going to be anything that, one would want to be sort of, reading about. So then he said to me, but you've got books inside of you. Do you realize you've got books upon books? And I thought, no, have I? And it still didn't dawn on me. So he then gave me an exercise to get all my journals out and start to collate them and see what happens. And that's what I started to do. And, at first I was a bit reticent. I'm thinking, no, nobody's going to want to read this. This is about me and everything else. And but I stuck to it. And then I remember coming across the first time I received a message, and I was just blown. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize how effective these messages were. And so that's how it started. And so I have to say that when I started writing the book, I had a prepared time every morning to write the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to really look forward to writing it because I wanted to know what the next message was. I wanted to know. Yeah, I wanted to know. And because it was giving me food for thought, and I was just so touched. But it didn't come across like it was me. It just came as if to say it was just meant to be. That's the message that, anyone can have. And I was just thinking, oh my goodness, there were points where I was just, in such awe of what I'd received. Some of it made me, close to tears. Some of it made my heart start beating. Some of it was, oh my gosh, this is so good,
Oh, I love it.
and just thinking, oh my goodness, if everybody had this, if I could share this with somebody, oh my goodness, if I'm feeling this, then they must also feel it. And so that's what kept me going.
Yes.
And that's how it came into being, because I had not really gone back and looked over them, after all these years. But it was also a healing experience for me as well, because, having, seen where I came from to where I am now, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And some of the things I could resonate with as to where I am now, and the messages that I received that brought me to where I am now. And it was just wonderful. So it was a real great experience for me writing it too. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a question that I had. I wondered if there was a surprise that happened, because often, I mean, these are soul searching. This is a soul searching kind of process. And often people will, as they go through the process, you just said it, as they go through the process, something will happen. Something will be surprising, or there will be a healing, and it'll be a surprise. And thank you for answering that already. It's like you read my mind.
Yeah, yes. And there were times when I would come to the, come to write, in the morning, and the message would be pertaining to how I was feeling, that particular day, or my thought pattern that was going through my mind. And the message would come through as, this is what you need to do, or this is what you need to say, or this is how you need to be. And I'm thinking, my gosh, is somebody reading my mind? What's going on?
Yeah. Because it was guidance.
It was guidance. It was real guidance. And so that made me realize how important this work was to complete. And, I had to take myself out of it in a way where I couldn't let my ego go ahead of me. It had to be the book first and then me afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Exactly. The thing that struck me is that the book is simple. It's easy to read, and you have it laid out in a very interesting way. Now, there are 14, should I call them sections, topics? Divisions, I guess I could say.
Or topics. Yeah, topics is a good word.
Yeah, I like that. And when you give the thought at the very beginning, and you always begin the same way, just as you said a few minutes ago, the thought will be at the top of the page, and then there's a big space, and then down at the bottom of the page, there's an affirmation.
Yeah.
I like the way that you've structured that, because what I read in the information was that you give the thought at the beginning, and then you give the reader of the thought space to think about it. And then at the bottom, you give them a daily affirmation.
Yes. And it was really interesting, because the first draft of the book had all my ramblings.
They had to tighten it up a little, did you say?
Yes. It had all the ramblings of the conversations that I was having, or the prayers that I was writing. And that itself, occurred to me. I mean, I must really thank my daughter for this, because when I sent the first draft to her, she looked at it and she goes, "Mum, do you realise that you put all the messages in speech marks?" I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, did you notice that?" And I said, "No, not really, because I just felt that, I had to make it look as if to say I was being spoken. This is what was told to me." So she said, "Well, I think that your, conversations, your ramblings," she didn't say ramblings, but I think that, the first part of, the book is really for another book, but the message in itself, standalone, is enough.
Oh.
So I thought, just like you. Whoa.
Oh, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yes, because she said, all through the book you've put in, you put speech marks. Well, why have you put speech marks if it wasn't meant to be written just as it is? So I said, right. So I completely took out all the messages and put it in one place. And then I realized that I just wanted the messages just on their own, but to give a flavor of how I got the messages, I did sort of add a few pages of my morning pages. I did add a few pages of, the way I spoke in my morning pages to give people ideas of what happened and how I got the messages that I got. So, but originally, it was like more of a life story than it was, the messages. Yeah.
And that's one of the things, it's so interesting that you said that. That's one of the things I like so much about the book is because you give people the message, but then you let them take that message and see how it speaks to them, because it may not say the same thing. We all hear things differently. But then you also give them that affirmation at the bottom, which I really, really like.
Yes.
Now, let's share a little bit of the book with our listeners, because I'd like for them to hear how this works.
Okay. Yes, because I know in my in some of my write-ups, I do let the readers know that this is not an ordinary book.
No, it's not.
You don't read it like you'd read from chapter to chapter. It's a book that you can, pick up and start from anywhere. And so, I've actually opened the book on darkness and light. And the message that was received from that is this. It says, ask for the light to open the way for you. Pray for understanding and forgiveness of your situation. If you dearly and clearly wish this to change, then speak to me alone and ask for the light to shine through the darkness. So that's the message. And the affirmation is, when in the darkness of life, the light is always there.
That's beautiful. That's just beautiful. And I'm going to share this with our listeners. When Dee and I first started talking, we talked about a reading from the book. And she said to me, I'm just going to let the book, when you tell me it's time to do the reading, I'm just going to let the book open and let it show me what I need to read. And so this is what the book and what the divine message wanted us to hear today. I love that. And I think that would be one way that people could use this on a personal level. And, because of the spaces that you left, they could also add their own thoughts and add their own journal entries in this book. I mean, that's the other thing that struck me. And if you're having a bad day, just sit down with the book, let it open, and let it tell you what the message is for the day.
Yeah, it's so true, Suzanne. That's exactly. And I've had feedback from others who have done just that and are truly amazed that the message that they've received is so apt to where they are. That has helped them to kind of be, to feel what they need to feel and to be inspired to know that it's not as gloom and doom as they think. Because this is what I like about the messages that after, doing the book, that there's such lightness to it. It's not about keeping you in that place of where you're feeling really low. It's lifting you out of that, but at the same time giving you the words to help you lift through it.
Yes.
If that's a good way of saying it.
That's a perfect way of saying it. Because, right now, let's face it, Dee, I mean, let's look around. The world is in a not good place right now, and so many of us are in a not good place right now, that a book like yours, because of the nature of the way it's written and because of the wonderful inspirational messages, I mean, it just is so timely and it's just so perfect. And I know that our listeners are having the same feeling, and let's tell them where they can find it. Now, Dee's book is on Amazon, so let me give you specific titles and some spellings. The specific title is Messages from the Divine Mother, a selection of spiritual conversations for women. Now, I suspect that you could put Messages from the Divine Mother in the search feature. When you go to Amazon, if you've never been there for the first time, if you've never done anything about a book before, if you just put Amazon in your browser and click on it, Amazon will come up. Now, there is a list. There's a little menu that you can click on, and it will drop down. Make sure that you drop down to Books. Put the title of Dee's book, Messages from the Divine Mother, a selection of spiritual conversations for women by Dee, that's D-E-E, Buchanan, B-U-C-H-A-N-A-N. Click on the title and the author's name, and the book will come right up. And in that upper right-hand corner, there is always a little cue that says, open here, or look here. I didn't know what those words were for a long time. If you put your cursor on those two words and just click, then the book will electronically open, and you will be able to read some of these beautiful, beautiful passages for yourself, the beautiful messages, and you'll be able to see the affirmations at the bottom. I think it's the first section, that's the excerpt. Now, Dee, I also know that sometimes people would prefer to buy their books from a smaller organization than Amazon. And we've talked about the book is available some other places, so let's tell our listeners where they could find it.
Right. Okay. Well, it's available on Balboa Press, which are also the printers of this book, and they are. That's obviously US and UK. Barnes and Noble, the Book Depository. That's also another worldwide bookseller. I've also been told that in UK. You can also find it on eBay. So I'm just kind of, that's interesting. But yeah, it's another thing I can say, Suzanne, if you actually put the title of the book in Google, you'll also get another selection where you can actually buy them. So it's very, what should I say? There's various places you can actually obtain the book, or you can actually also go onto my website, which is under the same name, but it's messages from divinemother.com.
Now, if they go to your website, Dee, in
there.
addition to being able to purchase the book, what else is there?
Well, you've got a real selection. You've got a story about me, how I came about writing the book, what I do as a profession, and just general information, about the book, how you can contact me, basically some extracts from the book. Just really a place you can go to find out more. If you're not sure, or you want to find some information or get the feel of the book,
I think
you definitely will get that from the website.
Will be important for the listener. They need to have that visual of what we're talking about, because we've both done our best to try to describe it, but you're right. It's a very unique book, and you really just need to put your eyes on it to understand exactly what we're talking about. Would you agree?
I do. I really do agree. I think you need to, even just seeing the cover gives you
Is there a story?
you know,
Is
a
there a
certain
story
feel
behind the
for
cover?
the book. Oh, it's so interesting. Do you know, I knew what cover I needed. I knew what cover I wanted. And I was able to find, you know, a book cover artist who was so patient with me and just was able to, you know, create this cover just by me, you know, giving her what I need, what I don't need. I mean, it took, there was a lot of adaptations, but this is what I saw the book needed to look like. And I knew the colors I wanted. And I knew, you know, yeah, it was always to do with nature and, you know, just being, I don't know, to me, it had to have a spiritual feel to it. And nature to me was depicted spirituality to me. And, you know, the image is I sometimes wonder what it is that I am trying to say with the image, which is just the white light. And I think that's probably how, you know, in two different ways, it can either be, you know, just me, you know, being pure in the time of seeking answers, or, you know, whatever, you know, anybody wants to come up with. But that's how I felt, that it had to be just no features, but just pure and, you know, transparent, which is, I think, probably what I was trying to give.
Once again, everybody is entitled to their own interpretation, right?
Yes, that's right.
Now,
That's
your book,
that's just it, actually,
is not a book that someone is going to sit down and just read from cover to cover immediately. What they'll do is sit down and they'll read a page, they'll read an affirmation, they'll think about it, they'll see their own interpretation, they'll go to the next page, they'll read this over time. And this is a book that you will not only read over time, but go back to over and over and over. But there will come a time when they will read that last page. And when the listener becomes a reader, they pick up a copy of Messages from the Divine Mother, and they do come to that last page and they read that last page and close the back of the book, either electronically or physically. What is the bottom line message that you really want the reader to take away from the book? I know it's a hard question to answer.
Oh, that's such a great question. Yes. I think for me, at the end of the book, I actually reflected back on my time of writing and getting these messages. And I think that's what it is. It's come to me now that it's a time of reflection. It's a time of looking and seeing where you've been and what you've learned and where you can go from there or here. It's also a time of actually recognize how much you may have grown, how much you may have understood, how much you may have learned. And for me also, I'd like to think that in some ways the book is part of one's healing, it's part of one's development, it's part of one's inspiration and empowerment. So, yeah, I'd like to have that be something that people do resonate with at the end of the book, that they feel empowered, or they feel in some ways something has been healed for them, or they felt inspired to move on from where they are, or, you know, to have learned something new about themselves.
I think that's a perfect message from the way that you and I have talked about the book. Moving on, learning something new about yourself, having that, quote, surprise or that healing or something that you didn't expect, I think that's an absolute perfect way for you to describe this book. It's just been an absolute pleasure. I think you can tell that from the way I've talked about the book and the way that you and I have had a conversation. I mean, it's been delightful to talk with you today. Thank you so much. Oh, see, we're thanking.
I've enjoyed it.
We've been talking over each other.
So much. No, I've been so...
But I want to thank you for being my guest. It's just been so delightful. I felt like two friends having a wonderful, warm conversation about your book. So thank you for that. It's just been delightful.
Thank you so much, and I really, really appreciate being asked to come and talk about my book. And I just, as I said, it really is something special, and I, just hope more people get to, to be able to read it.
My absolute pleasure. Now,
so yeah,
remember,
thank you. Thank you very much.
You can find Dee's book, Messages from the Divine Mother, a selection of spiritual conversations for women by Dee, D-E-E, Buchanan, B-U-C-H-A-N-A-N, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and on her website. You've been listening to the Books on Air podcast, brought to you on webtalkradio.net. You can also hear this podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. I'm Suzanne Harris, and I so hope you'll join me for our next Books on Air podcast, because remember, you never know who's going to be here, and you never know what we're going to talk about. So thank you so very much for listening.